Good morning. Some months ago, there was a television programme featuring Jaywick, but it didn't feature it in a very positive light. It showed only one side of the society and the community in Jaywick. It actually made me so cross I felt I wanted to do something about it. And so we decided, myself and Heather, the director, to make a small documentary showing the other side of Jaywick and presenting hopefully a far more balanced view. We've tried to present a cross-section of the community in Jaywick with people ranging from Mr. Carswell, people from the fire service and other people who are very involved in the local village. So here we go. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it gives us some fresh ideas for the way forward for this thriving little seaside village community. Thank you. Good morning. Here we are in Jaywick Community Centre. Very lucky to have with us this morning Douglas Carswell, our local MP. Mr. Carswell, can you comment on some of the positive aspects that you've seen in the Jaywick community?
I've been coming to this community centre here in Jaywick for 12, 13 years. I've got to know the area really well. And there are a lot of great things happening in Jaywick, and a lot of great people in Jaywick, and a lot of great organisations in Jaywick. And it sometimes frustrates me that people don't always see that side, and I really want people to hear about that. One of the great organisations that I think people need to hear more about is Friends of Jaywick Library. Here's an organisation that was set up by volunteers when government took away their library, and they run the most amazing library. It's all run by volunteers, and they do a fantastic job. And it's almost in effect become, I sometimes think of it as a sort of a parish council for Jaywick. It represents a spectrum of local opinion. There's local community groups run by people like Jill Elkins, and they give a real voice to people. They a few years ago invited me to come along to judge the Golden Oldies Award in the Jaywick Carnival, the Jaywick Festival. There are all sorts of things going on. There's a community garden. There are a lot of very civic-minded things happening in Jaywick, and they create a very sort of rich tapestry.
Thank you. So, leading on from that, what would you say are some of the strengths of this community?
I'd say one of the real strengths of the community is the extent to which people know one another, and people often look out for one another. It's got the feel of a village to it, and in any village, people tend to have a sense of community, and I think that's particularly strong here. People in Jaywick, I think, have quite often been let down by officialdom, and it's quite interesting, isn't it? We tend to want to have quite a benign view of officialdom, but Jaywick's been consistently and persistently let down by officialdom. They failed to maintain the roads. They promised hideous master plans several years ago that involved bulldozing large parts of Jaywick. All sorts of hideous proposals by officialdom. So people, I think, tend to have a scepticism towards officialdom, but in a way that sort of binds them more closely together, and it actually means that there's a community spirit down here that, let's put it this way, you don't find it on the London Underground.
I agree with that, actually. I think there is a huge sense of community, and it is very much like a village. Bearing that in mind, what do you think can be done by community residents and the powers that be too, either individually or working together, to resolve some of the issues faced by the Jaywick people?
I think the key to addressing many of the problems that Brooklands and Jaywick face is to remove some of the restrictions that have held Jaywick back. If you look at the state of some of the housing, if you look at some of the what Americans would call real estate property. It's in the state it is, not because the weather's different in Jaywick or because the laws of science are different in Jaywick. They're in that state because for years we've had some very irrational planning rules. Because of the floods in the 1950s, we've in effect had a situation where it's been illegal for anyone to invest private money in housing. Now, if the street where most people lived had a blanket ban on private investment in housing stock for a generation, the housing stock would be in pretty bad shape. We need to remove, and we have removed, a lot of those restrictions. We now need to stimulate a bit of investment in Jaywick. That means the council building council houses. Now, my old party, the Conservative Party, was famous for selling off council housing. I think it's actually the local council is doing the right thing now by actually building new council housing. I think that will kick-start more money coming into Jaywick. There's great, look at that beach. It's one of the sandiest, most beautiful beaches in the country. Land is relatively cheap here, and I think if we remove those restrictions and encourage new investment to come into the area, I think it could be absolutely transformative.
Yes, I sadly miss Butlins. Do you have any stories about any local individuals with a positive attitude who have overcome difficulties in spite of some of the obstacles that you've already mentioned?
Absolutely. I mean, I think some of the most inspiring people that I've met in Jaywick are volunteers at Friends of Jaywick Library. Let me give you a little story. You tend to think of a library as a place where you go to borrow a book, and you can do that in Jaywick Library. In fact, they've got a huge collection of books, all of which were given by volunteers and donations. But they do one thing extra special for a lot of elderly people and for a lot of people who might have a disability, and also do your shopping for you. Now, when was the last time you heard of a library that does shopping for older people? And yet they do that. And talking to some of the people who volunteers at Jaywick Library, it's extraordinary the extent to which they look out for and take care of their friends and their neighbours. And I remember listening to frontline politicians talking about the big society. If you want to come and find an example of the big society, come and talk to Friends of Jaywick Library. They've been doing it for years.
We are actually going back to see the Friends of Jaywick Library.
I think more people should come and visit Jaywick Library.
We are indeed. And finally, how would you see the future? What would you like to see in the future?
I would hope that there's been this cycle of downward falling house prices, falling property prices, and a feeling of Jaywick being left behind. And I think we need to break out of that, and I think we can break out of that. We are sitting here beside one of the most stunning beaches in the country. We've got a lot of space around here, a lot of land around here, and I think with a little bit of verve and imagination, this whole neighbourhood could be very, very different in 5, 10, 15 years' time. But what we must never do is make the mistake of thinking that Jaywick is somehow a problem that needs a master plan. Several years ago in this very building, I sat and listened to some outside experts coming in and deciding they were going to foist a master plan on Jaywick. That's not what we need. What we need is we need to remove the restrictions that prevent development. We need to allow private investment to come into Jaywick. The council needs to do what it's meant to do, which is to maintain the roads and fix the roads and the streetlights. We also need, and I think this is a really, really important thing, to get things right in the local primary school. If you've got young people growing up in Jaywick and they get the same life chances at school that children anywhere else in Essex have, it's going to transform this area for the better. We're a long way from getting there, but we are getting there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carswell. So, good afternoon from the Friends of Jaywick Library. I'm delighted to introduce Sylvia Hobbs, who is a leading light in the library, and she'll explain more.
Oh, well, good afternoon. Yes, we took over running the library about 8 years ago when we were told it was going to be on the move to Bishop's Park. This is not what the community wanted, and from then on we had donations of books being brought in by the public, which we now have on display.
Lovely. So you were all a bit outraged at having to move away,
Yes.
so you banded together, and Essex County Council allow you to continue. They rent this from you at
Yes.
the moment, don't they?
Yes.
And you have a selection still
Of
from
Essex, yes. We are the local access point for Essex County Council. But mainly the books are donations from people either living in Jaywick or friends of people living in Jaywick.
That's lovely. And I can see on the floor behind you that there's a big box for food bank donations.
Yes, we started this up after we did a quiz night for the homeless in Clacton, which we had a quiz night in the Golf Green Hall, and then decided that perhaps we would put a box in for anybody making a donation so that we can pass them on to the Salvation Army.
Oh, that's lovely. And a little bird also told me that you do shopping for people who can't manage.
We do, we are a community that we all help each other. If anybody is in trouble, they usually will find somebody that knows somebody, and we all help each other to do shopping, taking people to hospital, whatever needs doing, we're there to try and help.
A proper community.
Oh yes, we are. We have a jumble sale practically every weekend, every Saturday. If it's the third Saturday in the month, it's for the library. But from the first, second and fourth, sometimes fifth, it's somebody might want to book it for a jumble sale, which it is this weekend actually. The gentleman is having a jumble sale in aid of his son going in for the marathon, London Marathon, and that is part of his donation that he's collecting for charity. But last Saturday we had a bumper jumble sale for the hall, and we raised £345.
How wonderful. I see you've got some beautiful cards here, Sylvia.
Yes, they're all handmade by various people that come into the library. They donate them and we sell them for 40p each or 3 for £1.
They're absolutely lovely. They really are. I must remember they're here. Thank you.
Okay.
I see you've got a jigsaw.
Yes, we have a jigsaw here that anybody coming into the library is welcome to put a piece in. They sit here sometimes and just have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and do as much as they like and then go. They also come and just sit and read the magazines and the papers that we have here. We don't have daily papers, but we have a magazine paper which is usually here for them to actually read.
Oh, that's lovely. It's lovely for somebody who's lonely to come. I know an old lady who doesn't get out very much. She doesn't go to a lunch club because she doesn't know anybody.
No.
But I think you run one here, don't you?
We run a lunch club on a Thursday morning, which is open to anybody that lives in the Tendring area. If they are outside of Jaywick, it will cost them £2.50 for a dinner. That is a cup of tea, cup of coffee to start with, a dinner and a pudding, and then a cup of tea or coffee afterwards.
That's right.
If you live in Jaywick, it'll only cost you £1.50. Children is 50p. Anybody under 12 is welcome to come during school holidays. If they're over 12, well then we charge them the full price.
Lovely, how nice. And I love this little children's corner too.
Yes, we do try to encourage the children to come in, but we don't encourage them to come in on their own. We like them to come in with an adult. Especially during the summer holidays, we thought that perhaps they'd like to come in and choose a book. You do sometimes get them on a Saturday morning come in with mum or dad.
Do you find some of the visitors who come to Jaywick come in here?
Oh yes, yes they do. They come in to find out what's going on for the rest of Jaywick actually.
Brilliant. So it benefits not just the direct community,
Yes, because if we know there's something going on down at the resource centre, we point them in that direction. And if we know something's going on over at the Methodist Church, we suggest they go over there, or even the Scouts Hall. The Scouts Hut is just up the road as well, and if there's anything that we know about, we point them in their direction.
That's lovely. On a slightly different topic, Sylvia, what do you think is the best thing about Jaywick?
Community. The community here is absolutely wonderful. Everybody looks out for each other, and I think that is the most important part of it.
And may I ask you how long you've been in Jaywick?
Over 30 years,
Wonderful.
and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Thank you very much for your time, Sylvia.
It's a pleasure.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I'm pleased to introduce Les Nichol this morning, who is the community builder for the fire service, complete with fire engine. And I'd like to ask you, Les, first of all, can you explain what you do?
Yes, my role really and truthfully now as a retired full-time firefighter is to work in the community, to develop resilience, to work with the community, to work on community projects, to assist other people working in the community as well. And really, not only just to work on the fire brigade message, but to work on community messages as a whole.
Brilliant.
So I like to say that the fire brigade pay me to do nice things for people, yeah.
That's lovely. And I understand that you go and fit fire alarms.
We do. Essex Fire and Rescue Service will provide and fit smoke alarms completely free of charge for any of the Essex residents. It forms part of a home fire safety visit. We will come along, we will look in people's homes and we will give them advice on their kitchen, on their electrics, on their escape routes, making fire plans, and at the same time supply and fit smoke alarms, as I said, completely free of charge. And this is available to any residents in Essex. It's not means tested, it's not relying on age. Anybody that's got a home in Essex that requires smoke alarms, we will go along and fit for them.
That's brilliant. And I suppose in a way that helps you to get yourself known by the local community.
It does. If we're talking about Jaywick respectively, when I first started in this role, I was what we would call a technician. My role was to collect referrals and to put smoke alarms up. So part of what I did down here with my friend Belinda, who was doing the job as well, we would come along and knock on every door. I've knocked on every door in Brooklands twice now, and we would knock on the door, and if the people were in, we would say, hey, I can fit the smoke alarm completely free of charge for you today. And we would go in, we'd do a little inspection, we'd give them the advice, and we'd fit smoke alarms. So that was really where I became aware of the community of Jaywick. That's when I became more aware of the community of Jaywick doing that.
Yes. And I understand that you do quite a lot of work with young people.
The Fire and Rescue Service do a lot of work with young people. We work with Tendring Enterprise Studio School up the road. We work as well with the Frobisher School. We go in and we give advice there. And the Fire Brigade is very committed to working with young people, very, very committed with our fire break schemes, with our fire cadet schemes, with our young firefighter schemes. We're extremely committed to working with young people, not just in Jaywick and not just in Tendring, but right across the county. These schemes are all working.
That's
yes.
excellent. Thinking back about Jaywick again,
Yes.
What do you think is the best thing about Jaywick?
The best thing about Jaywick, that's easy to answer. The best thing about Jaywick is the community. They could teach us a lesson about communities. My role, as I said, is to develop communities, is to bring us on, to build resilience in communities. We have to understand that things are getting worse now. The country is poorer and there's not as much money around, and so support agencies are slowly slipping away. And so what we're looking to do is to bring back perhaps the type of community that I certainly would have known as a youngster, where people would look after themselves. Families would look after themselves, neighbours would look after themselves, and that was a community we understand. And what we've got to do is rebuild that. Well, quite frankly, Jaywick already has it in spades. They just have lots and lots of this sort of community-based work. As I think I said, when I did the door knocking to fit smoke alarms, I would knock on number 3, and the lady in number 3 would say, oh yes, please come and do mine. You will go and see Mary at number 5 and Anne at number 7 and Jean at number 9, won't you? Because they know their neighbours, good or bad. And once again, about the community in Jaywick, yes, like every community or a big family, yes, we have our spats, we have our arguments and we have our fights, but when it comes right down to it, we're still one unit.
That's brilliant. And so how would you like to see the future? How would you like to see Jaywick progress?
I would like to see, without being too political, I would like to see some of the promises coming to fruition. I would like to see people... I come to the Jaywick Forum, which is a fantastic group that works from within Jaywick to support Jaywick. And I make no secret of the fact that every time we come to a forum meeting, there's 1 or 2 people come along and tell us what they are going to do for Jaywick. Sadly, that's the last the people of Jaywick see of them. I'd like to see some of these promises reach fruition. And I'd like to see Jaywick to get the amenities that the rest of us in the county, or the rest of us in the county, the rest of us in the country enjoy. I can't help but look at these roads in Jaywick and believe how much their lives would be changed if every home was served by a nice road like I had outside my house.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for coming this
My
morning,
pleasure.
Jez. And I will just say that every single person I have spoken to has mentioned that the community is the strength of Jaywick.
Oh, thank you. And I believe that as well, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Dan Casey, who is a member of Tendring District Council, who is very active in Jaywick. Good morning, Dan. Would you like to tell us what you do?
Well, I'm a district councillor for the Golf Green Ward, which in that Golf Green Ward it represents the Brooklands, the Grasslands, the village, the Tudor Estate and Sackett's Grove, the mobile caravan sites down there. So that's all my ward, that's what my ward is there, and I belong to most groups within that ward. So quite active getting around and meeting people, etc.
Lovely. We're back here in the little library, which I know is a hub for this area, isn't it? Would you like to talk about your influence and involvement with that?
Well, there was a group of us, and it's not me taking credit, there was a group of us volunteers came together. Our library was closed by Essex County Council, and it had been closed for 3 or 4 years, and we wanted to bring our library back. And we had negotiations with Essex County Council, who actually pay our rent, in fairness. They pay a rent to us there, and that's all they pay. All the other things like gas, electricity, running costs are all down to us as volunteers, which we hold jumble cells for, different things there, so we've got money in the bank, etc. And should the day come that they pull out, we would have it as our own library anyway. We would actually have enough money in our bank, which we made over the years, to actually end up with a decent library of our own.
Splendid.
But on top of that now, it's now become what have a meeting place, and where people come in, just have a cup of coffee, a chat. There's different groups come in here. Sometimes the police come in here. Different people come in and talk about different things in their own little way. And on Thursday, we have a superb lady called Susan who runs what they call a knit and natter group, and that's what they do. They sit and knit and natter, but they do things together. They go out to things together, etc. And it's a super place for somebody. A lady this week I seen who lost her husband about 2 months ago, Jenny, a lovely lady, came in and she was sitting there, and I said, "Blimey, Jenny, it's lovely in there." And they seem to gather somebody around them. If somebody has a loss, it should be surprising in Jaywick, the people in Jaywick gather them round and they start to come out a bit and help them through that very difficult period if you lose somebody.
Yes.
But it really is a superb meeting place for people. You should never be alone in Jaywick, because at the end of the day, and Golf Green Hall attached to it, there's so much going on every night, from bingo to keep fit to line dancing, you name it, all happens in this hall.
Yeah.
And like this Saturday, most Saturdays now there's a jumble cell, because people around here like jumble cells.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think is the best thing about Jaywick?
The best thing about Jaywick, when I came to Jaywick, my wife and we actually came along, and they said, "Jaywick, oh, don't touch Jaywick." And this property where we live came up from Jaywick. And we basically went and looked at this property, and blimey, it was in the Tudor, superb property. Anyway, we bought it, and it was as simple as that. But what do I like about Jaywick? I like the people in Jaywick, because I think at the end of the day, most people in Jaywick have got a story in their life. And most people don't talk to people about their lives, because if you do, you'd have some wonderful stories. I'm also the president of the British Legion in Clapton, so basically I do the welfare, so I meet people around in all the different places. And in here, the thing about Jaywick is they get on with their life. They know most probably they haven't got everything, but they've got this wonderful companionship that's down here, and the community spirit. It's wherever I've been around the world, and I've been to lots of places I live, but the community spirit here, where I'm living now, is fantastic. You've always got somebody who will support you down here.
Yes, I've noticed that in making this documentary. It's become very, very obvious that there is a strong sense of community.
Yeah.
So, how would you like the way forward to go?
Well, the biggest issue down here is not say the biggest issue, because we had just to say we had the energy companies come here some 2 years ago, and basically so it was free insulation, free gas boilers, free double glaze, and you name it, the lot. This is free, and it was actually fact, and I couldn't believe it was actually free. So there's about 500 or 600 homes down here have actually got. I don't know if you've ever drove up, you can see the ones that have had the insulation there.
Yes.
Fantastic. They have warmth in them. They're the things. They really are places for people to actually live in nice comfort, etc.
Yes.
Now that to me is the start, and it's the catalyst. What the biggest issue down there has been for 50 years has been the Brooklands area. Not the people in Brooklands' fault. Different people say they're going to be doing something, etc., which they haven't. They have. They put, I suppose, a bit of how would you, sticking plaster on it and gone from there. But now we're actually going to get something done down there. We're going to have the roads done down there. We've got investment and group that's down there. And myself and my fellow councillor, Nick Brown, we introduced the beginnings of this investment group actually to the council to start the ball rolling. So we're very pleased between ourselves to actually introduce people, and they are players down there where it's going to happen. You know, all right, you have to say, if you're the ruling party, the Conservatives will claim that it's their, fine, okay, that's up to them. But if it happens down there, and going to that presentation you went to down there, if only half of that happens, I'd be delighted. It would be a step in the right direction. But I'm hoping it's going to be serious. But my biggest down here, my biggest dream, and what would like to happen, is to get some employment for some of these people. People don't want to be on the dole. But the fact is, if they go to work from here, go to Colchester, they have to get a bus from here, bus to Clacton. It could take almost 2 hours to get to Colchester. 2 hours back. The cost of a travel up and down there. And then really, when you think they're actually on the benefits, you know, they would lose money by going to work. We've got to try and get a system that we make it fair to get them to work.
Absolutely.
And give them something in their lives, because I don't think they want to be there. You know, I wouldn't want to be there. You know, I worked all my life.
No.
But there, I always had a job. There was always something there I could have done.
Indeed.
But no, that's what I want to see. That want their lives. So what do you call it? The children down there. I was chair of governors for 6 years at Frobisher, but I'm still a governor at Frobisher. When they go around anywhere, the children of Jaywick, the compliments that come back how well behaved they are. Now these are the children, when people make issues down there about what do you call it, they are the most well-mannered children in all our schools across Tendring. And it's been, and they actually went to Michael Gove up in Parliament, and he normally gives 5 minutes to them. They had him for 20 minutes, and in the end they're basically, he was glad he got rid of them because they asked him too many questions. But they are really, Julia, I don't know if you've met Julia. Julia's a lovely lady. We've got a new head teacher there, and she's got a great team. I've just been there this morning doing the health and safety there, but it really is. Our children are good. Give them some good accommodation to live in, etc. The jobs, well, I don't know. You know, it would be nice to have to get some investment to come in to give them something to do. There's talk about a park along by the airport there to do a themed park type of thing there. Not the same on the Butlin Stoke, but enough to employ most probably 50, 60 people, and it could be a start.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, if we can get that going there, because
Yes.
we've got air show, bike race, we've got so many things going on,
Yes.
really, but we need to attract something to give these people hope. That's what it is, you know. To me, if that had been me, getting up every morning, I don't know what I'd be doing, really. Looking at a mirror, no work, etc. I want something to happen for the people down here. There are people down here who don't want to work, but most of the people down here would like a job and have a decent living for their family.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to see happen.
Thank you very much for your time,
Okay.
Dan.
Yeah.
So, Courtney, can you tell me all about this project? It's Test Fruit and Veg. So, how does it work?
We pack go get the vegetables, and then we pack the boxes. Then we take them to the elderly people, or like the people who have had kids and they can't afford it, like as much as like other people can, like people with young children and that. So we help them out. It's only like £8 a box, so it's alright.
It is good value, isn't it? So, how do they order? Do they phone in, or
They can phone in, or they can write it on a bit of paper for when we go deliver it, and they'll give us their next order for the week after.
Oh, I see.
But they can like email it to Johnny and like however.
And do you see the same people every week?
Yeah, we do get some new people. We've got some new people 2 weeks ago, and they will either have it like once a fortnight or every Wednesday. So you can choose if you want it like once a fortnight, or do you want it like once every like month, or
Oh, is it?
so you can choose.
Great. So, what do you like best about doing this?
I think it's meeting new people, because I'm not very good with like talking with people I don't know, but there is quite a few people I get along with.
That's lovely.
So it's alright.
And do you feel that the old people look forward to seeing you?
Yeah,
And sometimes they tell you their life story, do they?
yeah. Like Edie, she just talks and talks, but no, she's lovely.
And you enjoy their company?
Yeah, I do.
Let me introduce Johnny, who is the project manager of this particular enterprise. Johnny, have you got anything to add? What do you think the best thing is about this particular project?
What I like about it is it gives, firstly it gives our kids an opportunity to work outside of the classroom, to actually engage with the community. It's definitely a social action project that has real benefit in the community, because we are targeting the young families who perhaps have just had young kids. The thought was if we can encourage them to start eating fruit and vegetables regularly, then that's to the healthy benefits of the whole family. But also the elderly who live in sheltered accommodation, so they live independently, still cook for themselves. But as you can see, this stuff is all pretty heavy and hard for them to move around. So there's a real benefit to the end user, and we've certainly found with the elderly, they do tend to have a fairly lonely existence. So having people, young smiling faces like these, showing up every week is definitely a benefit to them. And obviously from the kids' point of view, there's a whole variety of different aspects to this project in terms of, you know, the maths involved, budgeting, trying to make sure that everything looks presentable, and the customer service side of it. So
Brilliant.
it seems quite simple, but there's actually quite a lot to it.
I can imagine. So, ladies, what have you learned since you started doing this?
To communicate with people who are older than me, people I don't know.
That's excellent. And do you think it's affected the way you eat a bit more fruit and veg than you used to, perhaps?
Sometimes I don't really eat it, but then I've started eating apples. And, yeah,
Brilliant.
I'm having grapes in ice cream. And
yeah, that's pretty nice.
So, what you're going to do now then is to start looking at a list and adding the fruit and veg into the boxes.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't let me stop you. Here we are in Lotus Way Community Gardens with Clive Elkins, who is the person who has made this happen. Clive, would you like to tell us how it began and how it was before?
Well, it's owned by Guinness Trust, and the wife and the Jaywick Forum, they got together and discussed it with them, and she raised all the money and everything, and it was then, we've got it on, I think, a 10-year lease with Guinness Trust. So what happens is, it was up here with weeds and everything, the whole lot. So she had to get landscapers, quotes, and for the money and all the rest of it, which went on for 2.5 years, I suppose. Yeah, because they found asbestos present, which had to be soil sampled, health and safety and everything. So then they got the contractors in and they levelled all and did all the front end, but this lot was just left. Wow. So it was opened, I think, in the October or the November, something like that. But I didn't retire work until the May, so by the time I went to the certificates, get all the certificates and that was June, July before I actually managed to work down here, and it was up here.
Good heavens.
So and then we had to clear it all, needless to say, and plant all the fruit trees, and then I suppose I spend day and a half a week down here during the summer.
It's lovely. What kind of fruit trees have you got?
We got walnut trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's I think 3 walnut trees. There's various sorts of plums, apples. There's a lime tree, a lemon tree, and an orange tree, and apples, pears, and
How
yeah.
lovely. So those give it 5 or 10 years and this will be a lovely park.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
What would you say is the best thing about the Jaywick, this area of Jaywick?
Well, I think it's a close-knit community, and some people hate it, some people love it, like, you know, but I know it's got its bad points down here, but it's also got its good points.
Oh, yes.
There are people that keep an eye on it for me and everything, and I say there's a woman just lives up there. She comes down every morning, any litter laying around, she picks it up and puts it in the bin.
It is actually, there is very little litter
No,
here.
there's a few bits and pieces, but I mean, she's just moved down here, so just before Christmas, so hopefully, you know, things will stay as it is. And
So how would you like to see it progress? What would you like to see happen in the future?
well, if all the trees grow, but the other side of the road, they are hoping to raise funds to make a BMX track for the children.
Wow.
But it's on hold at the moment because Guinness Trust don't know whether it'll be built on.
Ah, yes, because there's a lot of building going on at the moment,
Yeah.
isn't there?
So,
Indeed.
but of course, with an influx of all houses, there'll be a lot more children in the area, so they need something.
They do. And perhaps what might be an outcome is that you get another little team together to support you.
That's right, yeah. Well, we can only hope.
Yeah.
We can only hope. We're trying to get some of the local schools, you know, to
Yes.
come down and sort of... They have bug hunts and things like that down here.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Clive.
Right, that's all right.
Good morning. Here I am with Errol, who's a local resident in Jaywick. Errol, how long have you been in Jaywick?
I've been resident in Jaywick for over a decade.
And what drew you to Jaywick in the first place?
I came originally to live in Clacton-on-Sea, and the housing agent took me to other areas, that's Boyne Clear. I wasn't satisfied, so he brought me into Jaywick. And I was fascinated with the tiny homes, which took me back to the time of Gulliver's Travels, Lilliput. And besides that, though it was rather poor condition, I opted because I could see there was possibilities of improvements following.
Okay. And what would you say, you've lived here for now over 10 years, what would you say is your favourite aspect of Jaywick now?
Provided you have people who are accustomed to living in a very secluded area, it can be very appealing to everybody. But what is essential is, as I just mentioned, you need to observe that others want that serenity in the area to be maintained.
So you're saying it's essentially still quite a serene, calm little village.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find the local community?
The local community, again, are generally respect the area, but you do have, being as it's occupied by tenancies, you have different people coming into the area who find it very easy to relax excessively, put it that way.
Okay.
And that can be disturbing to the neighbourhoods.
And so how would you like to improve in the future? How can we move to improve Jaywick?
I feel the housing, there is an attempt to improve the housing and the avenues. If that does materialize, then you could have people who will take a further and a deeper interest in the village itself, because promises have been made, and only in recent times we have been made proposals which we believe are going to help the area considerably.
So, bearing that in mind, Errol, what improvements would you like to see made in Jaywick?
Well, the housing needs improving, and we've been promised improvements for the avenues and also for housing again for the tenants. And that also we need a more participation from the people to upkeep the area
So, yes.
in good condition, because at that that creates a very, very ugly situation when there is neglect.
So you're hoping for more community responsibility.
More community responsibility.
Things like the lovely Lotus Way garden.
That's right.
Can you think of, if I were to ask you your one real favourite thing as we speak in the 10 years you've been here, what's your favourite thing about Jaywick?
I would say that that it can be, as I've said, it can be very peaceful, and it gives you the opportunity to go about your activities, your personal activities within your own home, which is very difficult to achieve in a very busy city or town.
Yes, yes. So it's the peace and the serenity that you cherish.
There again, that is possible because in the avenues, movement of traffic is limited because there is a dead end. That contributes to the quietness, and also you do not have too many people using the avenues, because being not necessarily terminating at one end, you don't have a flow of people through the area.
No. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning.
That's very kind of you, thank you.
And let's hope Jaywick continues to improve in the way it already has begun.
Thank you.
And so, now you've seen Jaywick, the other side, we've learnt quite a lot in the making of this little film. Perhaps one of the first things we felt was transport would solve an awful lot of the issues. It's a couple of miles to the nearest supermarket. It's several miles to the nearest school. And for people hoping to get to work, they have to leave at the crack of dawn and come back at dusk. That would be something I'm sure is quite easy to resolve. Another thing we learnt was that young people can liaise with the elderly quite happily, and it suits two purposes. It helps the young people to understand what life is like for the elderly, and it brings a little bit of youth and joy and fresh air into the lives of the older folk. I think this is something that could be developed. We need perhaps to build more bridges of that sort between the two generations, or all generations, in fact. But overwhelmingly, the one thing that we learnt in the making of this documentary, was that Jaywick has a huge strong sense of community. Not only formalised with organisations, with meetings, with those sorts of events, but an informal thing. If somebody's in trouble, the neighbours muck in and help. I think it's wonderful. And I think we need to develop the sense of village, the sense of community, and encourage everybody to take part and share in what can be a very promising society. Thank you.